So hi, my name is Chris Schroeder, CEO and co-founder of App47, and we're going to jump into App47 real quick, but to give you a little bit of history of App47. So my co-founder and I, Sean McDermott, started a company a number of years ago called RealOps, and we're two guys that have always been in the enterprise space. And as we sold that, we sold it to BMC Software. We looked at each other the day after the deal closed, and we said, we want to go do consumer. We've had enough of this enterprise stuff. The sales cycles are too long. The customers are hard to work with. It's just too hard. So we went through the deal. We got it done. We went off about 2 years after that and started playing around with some consumer products and built a couple mobile apps. That's when we started coming here to MoDevDC. We learned two things. One, we don't know anything about consumer marketing, and customer acquisition costs at $1 a time are really, really hard. So we gave up on that. We went back to the enterprise, and so we're back here with App47. Talk a little bit about our experiences in the enterprise and how that affects the mobility platform. So what we've been seeing and talking to customers is you've built that enterprise app, but now what? How do you provision it out to your enterprise employees? How do you configure it once it's out there? How do you secure it, not only the data that's on it, but what is the employee doing within the application itself? How do you measure its performance? How do you provide the analytics? And how do you detect when the fault happens? All this, the enterprise has done for years on their desktop platforms or on their web-based applications. So that's nothing new to the enterprise. The enterprise has been doing this for years. What's new is the platform that they're distributing their applications on, and that's the mobile platform. Be it the Windows platforms that they've had for years, or be it the newer iOS and Android platforms that are coming out. So the way that we look at this at App47 is we look at it from a lifecycle perspective, really focused on measuring the mobile user experience. So if you start off at the top, and when you look at deploying, how do you get the app out to the user, to your employee, which is the user? You're not going through the iTunes store, you're going directly to that user. So we still do this in a self-service, over-the-air, secure manner. We get the app out there, we help you provision it, not only provision it, but configure it once it's on the device. And then once it's on the device and up and running, how is it performant within the specs that were originally designed for? Capturing fault information, capturing analytics, and then feeding all that back into how to make a better app for the employee. The thing to think about when you build an enterprise app, you've already more than likely got the desktop application deployed onto their desktop or the web application. So now you've invested money into that enterprise app, into that enterprise mobile app. So the employee has a choice. They can either take that opportunity to make that action on the ride back in the taxi cab, or they can wait till they get back to their desk. So you really need to make that mobile app, just as you do on the consumer side, the best possible experience, the easiest to use. And if you're not investing those dollars in measuring that and monitoring that, then you're really kind of throwing money away, because you don't know how well that enterprise app is performing. So it's just as important on the consumer side as it is on the enterprise side to measure that and understand that. So this is what App47 does. We deliver this in a cloud-based solution. So you sign up, you download our SDK, you plug it into your app, and you're able to get all these features within hours of signing up. So it's pretty easy, pretty straightforward to do. So we're going to walk through a couple screenshots. I didn't want to take the risk of showing a demo with Wi-Fi and all that, but you feel free to sign on and give it a go. It's a free 30-day trial, so you can sign on, no risk. But real quick, you just have a simple dashboard that gives you an overview. If you have more apps, obviously they're listed down. You can have an overview of how often it's being used, go in and edit the settings on the application. You get a quick overview of analytics of how often is it being used, how many devices are you running on, what kind of net new rate do you have in terms of downloads or installs, how long is it being used, where is it being used, on what type of device is it being used, all the typical analytical stuff that you would want. You can also measure performance. So we have ways that you can measure how long it takes for the app to start up, how long it takes to perform a transaction, how long, what's the network transit time as opposed to the processing time on the server or the processing time local. So all that can be recorded and trended over time, so you understand how your application is performing. We also have a logging facility so that we can not only capture crash logs on the devices or in the applications, but you can also capture additional error, warning, or informational log that you might want to help diagnose across the enterprise as you deploy the app out. It's too hard to understand why did the application crash, or why is it not doing what you want it to do, if you don't understand the context of what's going on in the application. And as everybody knows here, logs are usually the best way to understand that when you're really trying to get down to the root cause of a problem. We also help the enterprise do build distribution, so we can do this in ad hoc or in the enterprise mode. So again, I said earlier, we have a self-service model. The user signs up, they get an app store, they're able to download all their apps over the air, be it an ad hoc build or an enterprise build, and all that's managed through our provisioning interface. So a couple quick views of what that looks like. So this is the app store that the user would see. They see the applications that they have access to. They can click on one of those, they click on the install. Install comes down over the air, and then they have the application installed and ready to go. So it's all very straightforward, very easy to do. So I've got more, but are we running behind on time, or are we doing okay?
Did I start the beginning?
No, you didn't.
Oh, okay.
That's why I was going to go ahead and ask.
You probably have another minute or so to wrap up.
Well, actually, I actually want to pause there and see if there's any questions that I can answer real quick about App47.
Does App47 work if you develop your apps outside of typical SDK, like use a phone gap or app server type team? Make it work with App47?
For PhoneGap, absolutely. The question is, does it work outside of the standard SDK, like Appcelerator or PhoneGap? PhoneGap, absolutely. Appcelerator, I believe that we would. Andy, I don't know if you can help me on that one.
Coming soon.
Coming soon, he says. So no, definitely PhoneGap. So the real simple answer is that we have an embedded library you put into your application. So as long as you can put that in there, you can use our service.
Does it track specific features or just overall app performance?
Well, out of the box, it tracks, what views are they on, how often does it use, what type of model. But you can use events to track specific actions that the user does. So you can, that's the idea of the events.
It seems to me on the consumer side, if you have a major app distributed out through the standard Google Market or the iPhone's App Store, that a lot of your functionality would be useful even to diagnose a consumer-based app. Do you have to use your over-the-air installer, or is any of this technology applicable for apps distributed through, let's say, the Android market?
I'll hand you $20 later. That's a great segue. Our marketing, our focus is on the enterprise. You do not need to use the enterprise distribution to use our capability. You can kind of think of the two sides of the house. We have the capability to do the over-the-air install for ad hoc and for enterprise, but the rest of the analytics, the logging, the configuration, all of that type of activity you can still use in a consumer app. We have apps that have been deployed through the iTunes and the Android Marketplace. So there's no really review on the Android Marketplace, but on the iTunes review, there's been no issue getting through there from a review process.
What's the overhead, and how big is it? You have to install something, so how big is it?
It's pretty small. I don't have the numbers committed to my memory, but it's under 1/4 of a meg in memory size, and you can control how, after startup, when does it actually upload everything to the server. We compress everything to limit network activity and things like that. So and everything's done in a background thread, which you can control as well. So it's pretty lightweight. In the documentation, when you log on, there's a resource page. There's documentation that gives specific numbers of the overhead for each one of those, for both Android and iOS. Yes?
Can you manage security between enterprise-owned devices and employee-owned devices with company apps on?
Yes, we do. We're able to, we work in more of the individual liable devices. So we're able to say this user on this device is allowed to run this app today. We're working to be able to say this user on this device is allowed to execute this function or have access to this data in the future.
What about in terms of ability to wipe the app and security management?
That's coming in, I think, 2 months to do. We're going to be able to wipe the app data. We're not an MDM vendor, so we're not able to wipe the app, but we are able to wipe the data. We just haven't implemented that yet. Last one, and then we'll release the floor.
Who are you partnered with, and what is your 6-month plan?
Partnership-wise, we actually announced a partnership last week with 3Pillar Global. Brian was here earlier. I don't know if he's still here. So they are a services firm that does offshore development as well as mobile development. And then we have 2 other partnerships in the work that I can't announce right now. One is another product company that will be OEMing our software to, and then another one is a system integrator on the government side. 6-month plan is really focused on the direct sale and building out our direct model alongside of our channel, and then probably raising a Series A within that 6 months' time as well. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We have plenty of beer koozies on the way out. If you didn't grab one, feel free to take one home and help yourself. Thanks, Pete.
Sure, thank you. Okay.